Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, with some breaking news. The Las Vegas Raiders are moving on from linebacker Germaine Pratt. And this is why you should hit that subscribe button. When breaking news happens, I'm going to do my best here to keep you up to date. The other reason why you should subscribe to the Raiders Report, to the people that were watching our live Monday show, and if you don't know, you don't believe me, go back and watch my Monday live show, how I started off. And if you don't know when I started it, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific. One of my segments, one of my topics that I was going to discuss today live on the Raiders Report were some locker room issues between players and coaches that are brewing right now with the Raiders. And I said, I'm going to do an entire show on it. I already have an entire segment around some of these locker room issues because I knew coming into today that there were some major issues that were brewing inside of that Raiders locker room. And then guess what? The Raiders make an announcement that they are releasing linebacker Germaine Pratt, who arguably has been your best linebacker this season. Pratt did not get invited to go to the game in Indianapolis. He was a healthy scratch. I don't know why that ended up happening, but to me, there are some major issues brewing inside of that Raiders locker room as it stands right now. The first thing, Germaine Pratt getting released. That tells me everything that I was told yesterday by my source was 100% confirmed that there are some major issues in that Raiders locker room. And, you know, Pete Carroll was asked about it yesterday, why Pratt didn't travel with the team, and Pete literally just said, just decided to go with other guys. When you just decide to go with other guys, that's one thing. But I think also when you go with guys that aren't your guys, I think that's also another very interesting thing. Like, would Germaine Pratt have gotten released if he was Jamal Adams? I don't really know. Would Germaine Pratt have gotten released if it was a other Pete Carroll type of move? I don't know if it would have, but I know this, that Pratt has been the Raiders' most consistent linebacker this season. He's been much better than Devin White. Yeah, you're going to get to see a little bit more out of Tommy Eichenberg now, which, good. Hopefully we get to see a little bit more out of Cody Lindenberg. Hopefully we get to see a little bit more out of Jamal Adams, but when your coaches are making decisions like this, again, I don't know if Pratt said something. I don't know what the relationship is. I am solely going off of the information that I was given. And the information that I was given makes it sound very strong that Germaine Pratt is not the only player inside of that Raiders locker room that feels a type of way with this Raiders coaching staff. I want to be very, very clear on that statement. If this is the first time that you're hearing all of this, I want you to hit that subscribe button. I'm going to give you free content, and I'm going to give you honest Raiders content. I obviously want to always try to hit my goals here. I'd love to be able to get to 206,000 subscribers, but I want to make this statement very clear. I am not a Raiders beat reporter. I am not a Raiders insider, but from doing this show, the connections, the people that I have made, I have sources. You can believe me if you want. I don't give a shit at this point. But when I get information, I am going to share it with Raider Nation. Why? Because I care about Raider Nation way more than I care about any player, any coach's feelings. I don't give a shit about. But if you were subscribed to the show, you would have known that there were some major issues brewing inside of that locker room. Let's go to another reason here of why I know that there's issues now brewing inside of that locker room. Think about that Colts blowout loss, okay? The biggest game of the year. You're 1-3. If you get to 2-3, your chances of making the playoffs, 29%. You fall to 1-4, your chances of making the playoffs go all the way down to 5%. But in a game, that was the most important game of Geno Smith's career. In a game that you need to be able to prove to the entire world that, hey, we're still going out there, we're still fighting. You failed in all three aspects of the game. You failed miserably, quite frankly. And quite frankly, when you've been given a week to be able to prepare, let's not look at the first game because you had a whole off season. When you've had a week to prepare, you were disgraceful against the Chargers. You were horrific against the Colts. You did an okay job. Unfortunately, though, Geno Smith threw the ball away 3 times. One of your Pete Carroll guys there, Pete, who you also made the statement I just heard that no other changes are going to be made. So you're already telling yourself that it's okay to not compete as long as Pete Carroll likes that guy. I just want to make sure that I'm okay with that because that's what I heard right now, that you just made the decision that no other changes are going to be made because you're okay with Geno Smith's play. Why? Because he's a your guy. All right, I understand that. That's the issue right now with the Raiders locker room. And I'm going off tangent here a little bit. But the problem with the Raiders locker room right now is there are players that feel there are Pete Carroll guys, and then there are players that feel like they are being judged in a completely different window. And that is the most Josh McDaniels thing that I've heard in a very, very long time. But then let's also talk about a team that they did. They flat out quit yesterday. And when you have a team that quits on offense, quits on defense, quits on special teams, but you also have a coaching staff that I think kind of quit as well. Chip Kelly had his head up his ass. Patrick Graham had his head up his ass. And I know that this team lacks talent, but it lacks talent because you guys decided to not go out and get anybody. So in a must-win game, you have your team absolutely positively quit on you. That's how I know that issues are brewing inside of this Raiders locker room. Team quit versus the Colts, right? Not only was it a blowout loss to Indy, it was the way that the game looked. And it looked really flipping bad. It's either you got a bunch of players that don't give a shit about being Raiders, or you got a bunch of guys that aren't talented enough, or you got a team that quit. Pete Carroll told me that he thought this team was good enough to be able to win. That means that you don't know how to evaluate talent well enough. It means that you don't know how to evaluate your own team well enough. But then at the exact same time, I watched that game. A lot of players quit. And if you think that a bunch of the Raiders players quit yesterday, I want you to hit that like button, because I told myself I wasn't going to get too fired up, too upset today, but I'm right back here in the same situation that I was in last year. We're just right back in to the same situation that I feel like we were in over and over and over again. Just no corrections are being made, and right now I think it's an ego problem. I think right now, based on the information that I've been given by the sources that I have, the ego that is being thrown around between the Raiders coaches, it is an ego of, I know more than you, and what you're providing me doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, what I say goes. And I get that's how coaching staffs work. I get that, it takes a relationship to be able to grow and to be able to develop. But also, if our coaches are acting in a way that it's just rubbing players the wrong way in a 1-4 start, I think that this thing is trending in the wrong direction. And the Germaine Pratt thing, yet again, proves that there are some major issues brewing inside of that locker room. Now, I got to give a shout-out to our sponsor here, Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app. Quite frankly, Prize Picks is how I'm going to get through this entire Raiders football season, because Prize Picks is simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you can cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. Prize Picks, how you play is up to you. If you want flexibility, choose a flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the biggest payouts, go for the power play. No matter your play, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test. Now, if you want to see my Monday Night Football lineup, when I say I mean my Chat Sports teams. Patrick Mahomes, we went less on the 249.5 pass yards. This is a 3-pick power play, which means all 3 of these need to hit for me to put money in my pocket. Travis Etienne, touchdown. Trevor Lawrence, passing touchdown. If you want to go more or less, I will say this. If you plan on doing any lineups with the Raiders this season, if it's Geno Smith interceptions, I encourage the more. If it's anything besides that, I probably encourage you to pick the less. So, download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. So, let's now go to the next reason here of why issues are brewing. I know for a fact, and again, I want to be very, very, very clear on this statement. When I designed this show, it was before Germaine Pratt was going to be released. I knew that Germaine Pratt and the Raiders were having some issues, which is why I made this show, which is why I was talking about issues are brewing. I am being very, very honest with all of y'all. I went out for dinner last night with my wife. Today is actually her birthday. Happy birthday to my beautiful wife. And I told myself I'm going to send out a bunch of feelers. I'm going to send out a bunch of messages, but I'm not going to look at anything, because after that game, I told myself I am going to concentrate on my wife. I'm going to concentrate on my family. I'm going to concentrate in front of the people that deserve my attention. But when I saw the messages that I got, I said I'm going to make a video on it. And I was told by a source there is some friction in the locker room between some players and coaches. Again, I want to be very clear. That statement, everything that I'm talking about on this show, was all made and all prepared before the release of Germaine Pratt. I knew the Germaine Pratt thing was bad. I didn't realize it was this bad. But I want to be very clear again. It's not only Germaine Pratt. There are other players that have issues with the coaches in that locker room. And I'm not saying that there aren't coaches that have issues with players. I don't know that side. The only side I know, there are players that have issues with coaches on that Raiders team. So here's my question to you. Who is more to blame for this mess? I'm not saying more to blame for the 1-4 Raiders. I'm just saying who is more to blame for what the hell we're dealing with right now. If you think it's the coaches, I want you to type C for coaches. If you think it's the players, I want you to type P for players. Let me know down below who is more to blame. My answer is going to be coming up here after this YouTube ad break. If you want to know who is to blame more, I'll say this. Both coaches and players deserve responsibility. Both need to be better. Here's the problem, though. The Raiders do lack talent. And I would say you need to blame the coaches more than the players because we knew the Raiders lacked talent in multiple different areas on both the offense and the defensive side of the football. The problem is our coaches didn't know that. Our coaches are still talking about practicing in the middle of a Week 5 game, which is laughable. Our coaches are still talking about learning the players, though clearly you don't still know them. And I think right now there is a problem because another word that was texted me was hypocrite. Because right now some of the things feel like players feel what the coaches are preaching isn't being backed up. And when you preach certain things, you expect it to be backed up. And I'm not saying who told me the hypocrite word. I'm not going to get into all those details, but I'll give you this example, right? If Pete Carroll's going to go up there and he's going to preach compete, and then Pete Carroll goes up there and says no other changes are going to be made, well, how can you make that statement right now? That means that you're not making Geno Smith compete. But why is a guy like JPJ got to go out there and compete every single game day? It is, again, proven that there are Pete Carroll guys and there are other guys. But the Raiders had chances this offseason to improve. They had the money in salary cap. They had 11 picks in total for the draft. But the Raiders, Pete Carroll, John Spytek, this regime told me that we're going to be good enough to be able to figure it out because that's what we do. Patience, patience, patience. Well, my patience is getting fed up because what this Raiders team has done this offseason and this year, I think is arguably worse than what we saw from AP and that regime. Arguably worse than what we saw from Josh McDaniels and that regime. And I'm going to do a show tomorrow live on the Raiders Report about all the insanely dumb things that this regime has done because I've been keeping a laundry list. Wait till you see that video tomorrow. And then you're going to go, holy shit, I didn't realize how dumb this coaching staff is acting. And then let's go to the final one here. I got to make this statement very clear. I did not talk to Maxx Crosby. I have not talked to anybody from Maxx Crosby's team. But the moment I saw Max answer the questions the way that he did yesterday, where he was basically like, no comment, I don't want to talk about it, Max looked frustrated. And he looked frustrated last week on his podcast. And, you know, he looked almost mentally broken after that game against Indy. And quite frankly, I feel like every single Raiders fan felt mentally broken. But if the Raiders don't start winning soon, Crosby will not end his career in Las Vegas. Max did not tell me that. Nobody from Max's team has told me that. What told me that? The dollar bills, his contract, the front-loaded of that deal that they gave him. It makes it easier for the Raiders to trade him away in the year 2027. But when your leader, the face of your franchise, is as upset and is as frustrated as what Maxx Crosby is, I think when he shows that level of frustration, that's the level of frustration that is in that locker room. It doesn't take one-on-one. Again, anybody can read between the lines. Anybody that follows this team could see that there's some issues right now in that locker room. Also, though, I do want to talk about some other potential trade candidates because one of the things I was going to talk about here is why Germaine Pratt could potentially be cut or could be traded. Shout out to Reed for making this or fixing this graphic, if you will, on the fly. But if you're the Raiders and you're 1-4, you got to sit back and you got to go, all right, it's clearly a rebuild year. There's clearly nothing good that's going to come out of this season. So what can we do to move forward? These, to me, are the top 4 players that I would say teams will show the most interest in terms of making a potential move. Obviously, I don't want to trade away any of these guys. Actually, that's not true. I would trade away Dylan Parham just because I don't think that he's coming back. And if we get some extra draft capital, put Caleb Rogers out there in the field, you know, let him learn by drowning or throw them into the fire, whatever the hell you want to call it. But these are the players that you're going to start to see some trade rumors around. Quite frankly, I would almost bet money that Jacoby won't be a Raider after the NFL trade deadline. And I don't want to trade JPJ, but there's clearly something that this coaching staff doesn't like about Jackson Powers-Johnson. And if you don't believe me, go check out the comments Chip Kelly made about him last week. Because Chip Kelly, what you said about JPJ last week, personally think it was a home move. So again, went live here, and I am live here on the Raiders Report, and I will be live on the Raiders Report every single Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific, to talk about the game that just happened. Now, obviously, if the Raiders play on a Thursday, I'll be live on that Friday. Obviously, if the Raiders play on that Monday, I'd be live on that Tuesday. But I want to be able to sit up here and talk to y'all and vent about what's happening. And one of the things that I knew was going to happen today, some information was going to come out on some locker room issues between players and coaches, and now it is overboiled to a point where the Raiders have decided to move on from Germaine Pratt. Now, if you want to hang out with me tonight, I'm going to be live Monday Night Football. I'm going to be live every single Monday night game, and this is me being real with y'all. Today is my wife's birthday. My wife gave me the okay because she understands what we do to put a roof over our head, put food on our table. My wife understands my level of commitment to Raider Nation. My wife understands how much I care about my job. But I'm saying this to you, man to man. I hope that you guys pull up for Monday Night Football tonight because we're going to get after it. We're going to get rowdy, and I'm done being sad, Pouty Mitch. I'm done being the guy that's upset about the Raiders doing Raider-type shit because that's what they're doing. They just do Raider-type shit over and over and over again. Let's have a little bit of fun Monday Night Football. I hope that you're there. I will also be live Tuesday, and I'm going to be live for Thursday Night Football. And then, obviously, this is the Raiders game when they end up playing the Tennessee Titans, and at least we get to figure out who's going to be the worst team in the NFL.